Thank you very much. So, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Mark Brits. I'm the Executive Director at the Centre of Excellence in Financial Services, and welcome to this masterclass on coal. What I'm going to do is introduce our first speaker, which is Professor Lwazi Ngubevane. He is an adjunct professor and director of the African Energy Leadership Center, chair in the hydrogen economy at the Wits Business School, and he will make some opening remarks. Professor Ngubevane, can you come in?
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. As Mark has said, my name is Lwazi Ngubevane. I am the director of the African Energy Leadership Center here at Wits Business School. With me, I've got a number of colleagues, but first I would really like to thank our partners for organizing this workshop, and that is the Center of Excellence in Financial Services, which Mark does represent. And also I want to first also thank our speakers in particular, and that is Dr. Lumkile Mondi, who will be introduced appropriately when the time comes. But for many of you, I think he needs no introduction. He's a long-time lecturer at the School of Economics and Finance here at Wits, but he's also joined recently the faculty here at WBS. And also we've got Dr. Nandi Malumbazo, who's a senior lecturer at the School of Chemical and Metallurgical Engineering at Wits, a highly respected coal scientist, but she's also a member of staff here at the Wits Business School as she teaches at the African Energy Leadership Center. So the reason we have or are having this workshop really is that, part of our strategy as the AELC and also as WBS, which actually happens to mirror Wits' Vision 2033, is to build partnerships with corporates, academic institutions, and government as well, towards finding solutions to some of the most pressing challenges that face society and our planet today. And in this, we are guided by the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And SDG number 7 really speaks to affordable and clean energy. And I think for most of you, I really don't have to explain how important the issue of energy access and energy security is for both the country and the continent as well. And of course, this becomes even more important going into the future, especially considering that our population is growing as a country and as a continent, but also the challenges of climate change and how we adapt to that, and what do we do with the resources that we have currently in the country. How do we beneficiate them to make sure that they assist us in developing our economies and bettering the lives of our people and ensuring affordable and clean energy. So this is really the purpose of this workshop, to have that discussion, and hopefully, we are able to start moving forward and influencing policy and decision making in this country. So I'm really delighted that Drs. Mondi and Malumbazo are able to participate in this workshop, and in sharing their enormous expertise really in matters regarding energy and the economy in this country. The ownership, the issues at our national energy company, ASCOM in particular, are well known. I'm not going to delve into them. And I'm hoping that Dr. Malumbazo and Mondi will be able to shed some light and give us hope into the future. Thank you very much.
So thanks very much, Professor. And now I'm going to hand over to Mr. Bert Chinetsa, who is the chairman of the Center of Excellence in Financial Services, to give some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this most timely masterclass on the future of coal. I would like to thank Wits University for facilitating this digital event. Thank you also to Professor Lwazi Ngubevane, Dr. Lumkile Mondi, Dr. Nandi Malumbazo, for taking time to share your insights and expertise on this topical subject. I cannot move on without acknowledging and thanking my own organization, the Center of Excellence in Financial Services, or COEFS for short. COEFS is a non-profit research organization that focuses on friction points in the financial services sector. COOFS brings thought leaders together and initiates appropriate research with the objective of interrogating the role financial services can play in achieving both national and international objectives. Our directors are encouraged to host webinars on topics of interest. And I'm proud to say that Dr. Lumkile Mondi is on our board. He has chosen the very topical subject of coal, which today will be looked at through a different lens. It is important for these dialogues to take place. In this way, knowledge can be shared and much needed research can be undertaken. This is in order for us to be able to give consideration to the optimal utilization of South Africa's natural resources, including coal and other fossil fuels. Messages and commitments regarding coal are starkly different between developed and developing economies. We hope that this masterclass will open the debate, and to kick off, I will hand over to our Executive Director, Mark Brits, who will introduce the speakers. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chinetsa. And the way in which we will manage this going forward is that we would ask you to type your questions in the chat, and we will allow some time at the end to facilitate those questions with both speakers. So first up, we are going to introduce Dr. Nandi Malumbazo, apologies. She completed her first degree in chemical sciences in 2004, and she went on to complete a BSc honors in chemistry in 2006. In 2008, she obtained an MSc in organometallics chemistry, and in 2011, Dr. Malumbazo completed a PhD in coal science from the University of the Witswatersrand. Dr. Malumbazo has also spent 9 years as a chief scientist at the Council for Geoscience, where she has established a coal laboratory for both commercial and research purposes. During her tenure at the Council for Geoscience, she led various projects as a project manager for small-scale mining programs on the economic evaluation of abandoned coal mines, as well as the shale gas Karoo drilling project. Prior to her joining the Council for Geoscience, she was a researcher at the CSIR on energy and processes. She is currently holding a position as a senior lecturer and research on clean coal technology at the School of Chemical and Metallurgical Engineering at the University of the Witswatersrand. Through her caliber of leadership and interpersonal skills, Dr. Malumbazo has played and is currently playing an active role in the coal to energy sector of the country. Through her ongoing engagements and involvement in various platforms that deal with the use of coal beyond 2040 and energy forecasts for a just energy transition of South Africa. She has also contributed significantly to the Integrated Resources Plan of 2019 through the Fossil Fuel Foundation. Dr. Malumbazo has published several peer-reviewed journal articles and is a co-author of a peer-reviewed book titled Southern Africa Coals and Carbons, Definition and Applications of Organic Petrology. She is also a board member at Energy and Water CETA. In addition, Dr. Malumbazo holds various technical advisory membership positions, such as the SABS TC Carbon Capture and Storage Standard Formulation Committee and the Council for Geoscience Carbon Capture and Storage Pilot Scale Injection Project. Any questions in the chat? And we'll engage at the end, time permitting. So, Dr. Malumbazo, please would you take on your presentation? Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. And firstly, I would like to thank the Wits Business School in collaboration or in partnership with COOFS for organizing this webinar. It's something that this is a webinar that should have that we should have had last year in November, but due to some circumstances, it was postponed to then today. So I am very grateful that finally we have this webinar. So the title then of the presentation today, it's the future of coal. Presented by myself, I will cover the role of coal in the green economy and its contribution towards the supply and demand of critical raw materials. And then Dr. Lumkile, which will be a speaker after me, will actually cover up the political economy of coal towards a new mineral and energy complex. So without wasting any of your time, I think let me then proceed. The first slide actually shows the coal fields or the distribution of coal fields in the Southern African region. And I think we are all aware that when it comes to then the coal production, the country, which is South Africa, we are the 7th largest coal producers worldwide, meaning that the country is actually have vast resources of coal. Not only South Africa, as you can see in this map, you've got your other countries in the SADC region as well as beyond the SADC region that has got untapped coal resources and reserves, meaning that there's still a future for coal in the Southern African region, other than also like if you can also exclude South Africa in that context. So that's why it's very crucial, or it's very important for us to have these debates around the future of coal in the Southern African region. So the uses of coal, we all know that the majority of our coal is used for electricity production. And it's also used for steel production, cement industry, paper and aluminium industries, as well as chemical and pharmaceutical industries, and coal to liquid, as well as in plant fertilizer as ammonia. But we've been facing some challenges when it comes to coal usage in the electricity generation industry, as well as in coal to liquids processes. But then what about the other industries like your steel production, your cement industry, paper and aluminium industry, and your chemical and pharmaceutical industry? Do we have any other source of, do we have any other input that we can then replace coal with? Because we're aware that in the electricity industry, we can then replace coal with renewable energy currently. And in the coal to liquids, we all know that we can actually use hydrogen energy to actually produce your liquid fuels. Then let's look at the coal economy as the current situation. The stats that I have, it's 2019 stats, but they are not far from the last year's stats that we have. As I've mentioned earlier on, that the country is actually the 7th global producer of coal, meaning that we are producing almost 258.5 million tons of coal per annum, which is then valued at 141.4 billion, which then creates it then creates 94,297 direct employment in the mining sector. And then it's the 2nd largest employer also in the mining sector. That's only on the production of coal, meaning coal mining. And then when looking at the coal sales, we actually sell 194 million tons out of that 258. At the local sales, we actually use 194 million tons per annum of coal, which is valued at 86 billion. And out of that 94, Eskom is using 120 million tons, then Sasol is using 42, then the other industries are actually using 34 million tons. But then we all know that the country is actually relying on coal for electricity generation, which is why then today we have the challenges that we have. So almost 70 to 85% of our electricity supply is coming from coal. And then that creates almost 48 or 49,000 jobs only at Eskom. So that's the current economy, the direct economy of coal production. But then coal does not only is not only being used for electricity generation or coal to liquid. There are other value-added products which can then be produced from coal. And these are listed here. I'm not going to name them. So this slide is actually showing the importance of the criticality of coal in the country. So then if we are moving towards the just energy, if we are actually transitioning towards the green economy, what does that mean? Is there political will? And my answer is currently yes, because we do have an IRP. That IRP actually states that the country, which is South Africa, only contributes 2% of the world coal split. And then we are the 15th CO2 emitter. But then at the same time, the IRP itself, it shows that Eskom will still be using 110 million tons of coal per annum, which is currently it's using 120. And then by 2040, that amount will be reduced to 55% of coal usage, meaning that we'll be moving from 70 to 85, then downscaling to then 55%, which then takes us back to we need to, as South Africa now, to come up with solutions on upskilling and sustaining the economy generated from coal on the power generation, which is the almost 35% that we won't be using coal for power generation for. What else can then we use coal for? What other industries can we then build from coal? What does that mean? It means that then we need a clear coal research and development strategy so that we can then be able to come up with new industries when it comes to coal usage. There are various possible options that country can then be able to sustain the current coal economy towards the just energy transition. Today, our focus is on the green economy, which is the extraction of critical raw materials from coal and its byproducts for the green economy. The rest of the other points, 4 points, we won't be looking at. So our main focus is the extraction of critical raw materials from coal and its byproduct. Then when it comes to the green economy, we've got 3 sectors that are actually critical for the green economy. It's your energy sector, it's your transport sector, and it's your aerospace. Then when it comes to then all of these 3 sectors, you also have enabling technologies. So when it comes to energy, we know that the transition is towards the usage of more renewable energy. When it comes to it's your photovoltaics and your wind generators. Then the enablers for the industry, that industry, is your energy storage, which is your battery, your fuel cells, as well as your traction motors, your drones, and as well as your robotics. Then, which is the country currently, when it comes to South Africa, this is where we are. South Africa, we have not really tapped into then the transport space as well as the aerospace. We think that the biggest challenge that we have currently, it's only on energy, but we still need to tap into the transition from the ICE into EVs, which is your transport sector, as well as the usage of your drones, as well as your 3D printing. Looking at the market share of your transition metals, your transition minerals or metals, this is a market value figure that I obtained from Bloomberg. Bloomberg is actually anticipating that by the year 2050, which is the year we're supposed to be at least reaching the net zero, or the year that we're supposed to be at least be on zero carbon usage, then these transition minerals or metals, will the value or the dollar value of such would have increased drastically due to the fact that the supply and demand of these would have increased as compared to the year 2022. So then this brings us then to a question that we really have, I'm taking this back now to South Africa. Do we have enough of these transition minerals or these critical raw material that will actually be critical for decarbonization or for your net zero or for our net zero goals, which is then the question that follows. As we transition towards the green economy, we have enough materials or mineral supply to achieve our decarbonization goal in South Africa. So the following slides, then I'll be looking at the work that has been done in Europe as well as in the US towards reaching their decarbonization goals or their net zero goals. And then that work, then I will take it then to what is currently being done or the research that is being currently conducted in the country when it comes to the identification of your critical raw materials for decarbonization or for the net zero 2050. So what is critical raw materials? I think let's start there. These are metals and minerals which are of high economic importance to a particular industrial sector or spatial area and are at a risk of shortage of supply. Currently, if you can actually look at the map on the right-hand side, you can see that China is actually the dominating country when it comes to the production of the critical raw materials. Then that means that if we have only one country that dominates the production of critical raw materials, but you must bear also in mind that China does not have, that they do not mine these CRMs or these critical raw materials or minerals. They actually control the refining, which is the beneficiation of these minerals, meaning that they buy minerals from other countries and then they beneficiate them or refine them so that they can then be able to manufacture the products for the green economy. So that's the strategy that China have mastered as compared then to other countries. And if we can come down then to South Africa, we can see that South Africa has only 3 critical critical raw materials, which is we are exporting 58% of our PGMs, and not all the PGMs formulate or form part of the critical raw materials. I think it's only 2 that form part. It's your iridium and your rhodium that forms part of the critical raw materials. And then we export only 32% of vanadium and only 12% of then titanium, and we also export. So this means that the country, as things stand, we have an opportunity to come up with a better strategy of how can, firstly, we increase our critical raw materials that we actually export. So there are various ways that, or there are various options that we can actually do that. We can actually explore more resources for critical raw materials. Firstly, we need to identify such, and then we explore so that we can then be able to mine. And another option, which is the second option, is for us to actually extract these critical raw materials from secondary resources, from your coal mine dams, or from your coal fly ash, or from your acid mine drainage, or from your mine slags. So those are the options that the country actually have if we don't have enough resources and reserves of these critical raw materials. So looking at the critical raw material security supply of the developed countries. Like the US, they've recently published an inventory list that has got 50 critical raw materials that are critical for the US, for US towards the green economy. And then in 2021, we have UK, which also published 18 inventory list of their own critical raw materials. And then in 2020, you have your Europe, which published 30. So in essence, you've got minerals that are of critical importance. If I can make an example, when it comes to UK, initially they had 28 they identified 28 critical raw materials. Then at the end, when they did their R&D, when they conducted R&D and they did their economic studies, then they ended up with 18. So you can then be able to identify, let's say, a number 80 of your critical raw materials. But then if you do your econometrics studies, you can end up out of that 80, you can end up with 40, a list of 40 critical raw materials based on the needs of, so this list is actually based on the needs of each and every country. So this means then that in the country, we are actually nowhere near here. As you can see, like the developed countries, they've embarked, like for instance, your Europe, they started publishing their first catalog or inventory list of the critical raw materials in 2017. And this was then reviewed in 2020. And in the country, as I've mentioned earlier on the map that I've shown, is that we have only 3. So there's still an opportunity for us to do more work and be able to also form part or be able to identify a list of our critical raw materials that will be crucial towards the just energy transition, which then leads us to the green economy. So this is an example that I actually took from the EU. If you can look at this map actually shows the global supply risk and the importance of your CRMs in the economy itself. If you can look at this graph or this figure, you can see that there are minerals or materials that are non-critical, and those are the ones that are highlighted blue, and the ones that are highlighted red are the ones that are deemed to be critical. So also, if you can look at this map, you've got, let's say, if we can look at niobium. Niobium in 2017 was sitting at an economic importance of less than 5. But then in 2020, when they did a reassessment of this critical raw material, which is niobium, you can see that the value of this or its strategic importance has then increased to actually almost 6. So when you actually do these reviews on, let's say, after 2 years or after 3 years, so a mineral can be deemed non-critical, let's say in the previous review, but then when you do another review, then that mineral, depending on the need of the country at that moment in time, when it comes to what type of minerals are they deeming to be important for their green economy, that mineral can actually be deemed as critical, or the critical importance can then increase. So then that's why then you'd find that it's crucial for countries to actually be able to review the list or the inventory list of their critical raw materials, let's say after 3 years or after 4 years. Looking also at the supply risk of raw materials for these key technologies, the key technologies that I've mentioned earlier on for the 3 industries or for the 3 sectors, which is your energy, as well as your transport sector. And then lastly, it's your defense and aerospace. You can, looking at this graph, you've got a supply risk factor from, or ranking from of the supply risk from 0 to 6. And then you've got this whole list is up to 30 minerals. This is an EU list. So this figure was actually taken from EU, from the European Commission document. So if you can see, for the enablers or the enabling technologies, starting from robotics up until ICT, you actually need almost all of these critical raw materials. But for the sectors, looking at the three sectors, the motor, the transport sector and the energy sector, you don't actually need all of these critical raw materials. But then you can't have then these three sectors without also the enablers. So then that's why then it's very crucial for us as a country to expand on the list of CRMs that we have, other than having only 3 critical raw materials that we have identified to date. Because we are going to then, we need enabling technologies in order for us to be really big contributors in the energy space, in the electric vehicle space, as well as in the defense, as well as aerospace industry. This slide is actually showing the EU supply risk of renewable energy minerals. So looking at, as I've mentioned earlier, EU has ranked their supply and demand risk for these critical raw materials, which is this. And then these are the different enabling technologies, and then you have your sector, which is your renewable energy. You can see that when it comes to then your rare earth elements, they are deemed as high risk when it comes to supply and demand for the EU for renewable energy, followed by then your magnesium, niobium, germanium, borates, and scandium. So you've got then your supply risk starting from the largest to the lowest. So the reason I'm actually flagging out these studies, it's because South Africa doesn't have any of these. And in order for us to actually play a crucial role in the critical raw material sector towards the green economy, we need to actually start coming up with such studies. We need to actually embark on a proper strategy as to, if then we're saying that by 2050, we want to reach net zero, how are we going to, what path are we then going to take for us to then get there into that zero emission by zero CO2 emissions by 2050. My slide. Okay, so this is just a slide that is showing minerals that are needed for electronics, e.g. your smartphones. This is also, it shows that on a daily basis, most of us, even on this presentation, you are actually listening to me using your smartphone. But what type of minerals do you actually need for you to be able to manufacture that particular smartphone? So you need your rare earth elements, you need your nickel, you need lots of critical raw materials in order for you to be able to produce such. We have enough. I think that's the question that I'm trying to impose. Do we have enough? Is our focus really, is it enough for us to really focus only on 3 critical raw materials, other than then we have an opportunity to expand and be able to be players in the world when it comes to the new minerals and energy complex program. And then looking at the minerals needed for electric vehicles, comparing the electric vehicles and the ICE or the conventional cars. For the electric vehicles, the world is going towards electric vehicles, whether we like it or not. I know the UK has actually put a policy to actually ban all the ICE cars after 2030, and they're going towards the electric. And some of the car manufacturers currently, as well as in the country, they've vouched that the world is going towards electric vehicles. It's something that we cannot run away from. So what type of minerals are actually needed for that, so that we can then be able to be players also in that space and stop being assemblers of cars? So you can see that 63% of electric vehicles will actually made out of graphite, and copper, 53%, and then you've got your nickel, which is 40%. Graphite, there are two forms of graphite. You can get your natural graphite, or you can get a graphite from coal. So this means that even from coal itself, you can actually get graphite. I think that's what I wanted to emphasize with this slide. And then looking, I'm making also an example here when it comes to the EU supply risk of these critical raw materials. They have ranked type of minerals or critical raw materials that will be needed for the electric vehicles. And you can see that the rare earth elements are on top of the list again. So that's what I've just presented, is when you are actually obtaining your critical raw materials from your ore bodies, when you're actually mining them. But also I've mentioned earlier that you've got another option of actually extracting your critical raw materials from your secondary resources. So these secondary resources, you can extract your CRMs from coal discards, coal fly ash, acid mine drainage, as well as mine slags. Then if you actually consider doing or partaking on, if you actually consider to actually extract your CRMs from secondary resources, that means that you are actually contributing towards the circular economy. You are not actually focusing on your linear economy. You are actually focusing on your circular economy, whereby you are exploring, mining, you process, you manufacture, and then you use, but then you don't end up only on using. You collect the waste and refine that waste to actually manufacture better products, so that we can, at the end of the day, we can be able to have a zero waste when it comes to any of the mining activities that we're actually conducting in the country. So the following slides will actually be focusing on the secondary resources of the critical raw materials, and also the R&D work that is being done in the country. This is a slide, as you can see, the US, they've started embarking in such projects in 2018. And they've got an annual budget of $23 million, starting from 2018 up until 2027. So you can actually see the importance of extraction of your critical elements and your rare earth elements from coal-based material, because you can't have USA investing such huge amounts of funds into a project that is not crucial for them. So if USA is investing in such projects, you've got also your UK investing in such, so that we can then be able to say, in essence, if we've got this number of resources and reserves of critical raw materials, how much then can we then be able to extract from your secondary resources? Then you can add that, and then you can reduce then the dependency of obtaining such minerals, or from such minerals, yes, or materials from other countries. So the US, they've actually also produced their rare earth elements usage. 62% of rare earth elements in the US is being used as catalyst in different industries, petroleum sector, in your transport sector, as pollution scrubbers, as well as in the chemical industry. Then you've got 13% of such, which they've identified that to be used in the metallurgical industry for your hybrid vehicles, your steel additives, as well as in the electronic industry. Then 9% it's for ceramics and your optical glass. And then 7% it's only for magnets. And then 3% for the phosphorus industry. And then 6% then it's for wastewater treatment. So the US is far ahead, as well as your Europe and your China and UK when it comes to then the extraction of your critical raw materials, including your rare earth elements from coal. So the current R&D that is being conducted in the country for secondary resources of CRMs. At Wits, currently embarking on 2 studies, which is CRM quantifications from different types of coal, as well as extracting of CRMs from coal using your metal organic frameworks, which is using an adsorption process instead of a leaching process. Then the UJ, University of the Western Cape, as well as Northwest University, their current focus is on RE quantification from coal fly ash. So these are the results that this is an ongoing research. I've got a PhD student and an MSc student that are busy conducting research studies on this topic. Preliminary results that we've managed to get, looking at the quantification of CRMs then from coal discards. And the type of coal that we have used, it's an anthracite coal, because you need to understand the what type of CRMs can you then be able to obtain from different types of coal, so that you can know at the end of the day as to what type of coal can actually give you the best results or the best amount of value for the CRMs. And what we then have identified is that in our coal discards from an anthracite coal, you have your arsenic, you've got your barium, you've got your cobalt, chromium, and these types of critical raw materials, which some of them, we found that they are, when we're actually quantifying them, we saw that they are higher as compared to your world hard coals. As you can see with barium as well as strontium, you can see that when it comes to our coal, our South African coal, we've got higher amounts. And then when it comes to vanadium and your world hard coal, you almost have similar amount of your vanadium in your coal discards, as well as your chrome. But then this is a study that shows that, yes, it's possible to actually quantify your critical raw materials from coal. But we need to remember critical raw materials also includes rare earth elements. So we went then further to actually look at the type of rare earth elements, or to quantify the rare earth elements from anthracite coal discards. And what we actually found was that the total rare earth elements, the amount, they are from 300 ppm up until above, let's say 600, as you can see when it comes to this graph. And then mostly for South African coals or coal discards are actually rich in your light rare earth elements, as you can see with this the orange bars. And then, but we've got minimum amount of your heavy rare earth elements, as well as your medium rare earth elements. So these are ongoing studies that are still that we are still embarking on, and I'm hopeful by by next year, this year, at least we'll have a concrete results or concrete document on this study. But further, when it comes to then, because we can't only quantify, you have to quantify, meaning you are mapping the amount of critical raw materials, then you need to extract. Then after extraction, then you need to find an application. So the second phase then becomes the extraction. So you've got various ways of extraction. You can use your leaching, your acidic solvents to do extraction, but instead of using acidic reagents or solvents, we've decided to use metal organic frameworks, which are highly used when it comes to metal extraction of in acid mine water. So we're looking at using the MOFs. This is a study that started mid-year last year. So we are actually synthesizing the 2D energetic MOFs, which is MOFs 808, so that we can then be able to see how much of your critical raw material can this catalyst or can this adsorbent absorb from coal or coal discards material. So these are ongoing studies that we're currently doing, but then I'm not only doing this kind of R&D work in South Africa. You have also the UJ that is embarking on such studies. And you can see that when it comes to this is a paper that was published in 2018. You can see that the total rare earth elements concentration that were actually found in coal samples were ranging from 95 to 149 ppm. And then the type of your rare earth elements that were found there, it's your heavy and your medium type. Then also it was found out that when you are actually on your coal, that's on your coal fly ash, that's when your rare earth elements are actually concentrated in the coal fly ash samples as compared to coal, because then you've got your total rare earth elements that are ranging from 402 to 599 in the ash samples. And these are deemed to be actually far higher than the average upper crustal values of rare earth elements, as well as your global average values on hard coal ash samples. Another study that was done in the same institution. Oh, these are the results that are showing this conclusion from your feed coal, and these are the results that are showing that you've got your lanthanide, your nobidium, as well as your cerium, which and your yttrium, which were high in coal fly ash, as well as if you can look at your, if you can actually look at the coal fly ash samples, you've got also the same type of rare earth elements which were high, which were found to be in high values. And then the Northwest University, they are also embarking on a similar study. This is a publication that was published last year. You can see that, but they were using XRT sorting to actually characterize the rare earth elements. And also they found out that actually coal does have rare earth elements. So this is a proof that coal has got a presence of your critical raw materials as well as your rare earth elements. So instead of then the country only looking at coal for electricity generation as well as your coal for your coal to liquids processes, we can actually use coal for something else or to support the green economy. This is a study also that was done, I think in 2020 by the UJ, whereby different type of coal ash chars were actually submitted, or different type of coal ash chars were submitted from different countries, but then it was found out that the char that was derived from our South African coal was the actually sample that had promising or that was actually good for gravitization, meaning that was good to actually form graphene. because you can only have your graphite or your graphene from coal if it's synthesized. But if it's not, if you do have resources, then you can mine such. So in conclusion, South Africa then has got an opportunity to increase or expand its critical raw materials or mineral inventory list from 4 to more than 10. And this can be obtained not only from the ore bodies, but also from the secondary resources such as your coal, as well as its byproducts and mine slags. So this can form part of rehabilitation program for the mining companies or for the country, for the environmental challenges posed by the mining industry. And in turn, this provides support towards the circular economy of mining. And critical raw materials or minerals are actually crucial not only for the just energy transition, but for economic and sectorial development of the green development, the green energy, of the green economy. And this requires a mindset in the political debate about coal as a strategic mineral for the country, meaning that more R&D work, when it comes to coal needs to actually support it, or more R&D work is needed on the critical minerals to support the South Africa's net zero goals, meaning you need your industry, you need your banking industry, you need your academics, you need your government to actually come up with a better strategy of how do we then, how do we achieve our net zero goals in 2050, and what strategic critical raw materials do we have? Do we have them? Do we have enough of them in order for us to replace the economy that is being generated by coal on the power generation and the coal liquid? And then where can we then really build a new industry when it comes to having coal supporting also the green economy? And I would like to thank you, Chair, for that. And I think my time is almost up. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was very interesting. We are starting to get some questions coming into the chat, so we'll look at that at the end of the next presentation. And of course, we will try and put the presentation into the chat so you can pick it up. Otherwise, we'll make arrangements to get that sent through to you. So our next presentation is going to be by Dr. Lumkile Mondi. In 1990, Dr. Mondi read a BCom at the University of the Witswatersrand. In 1992, he was awarded a BCom Honours in Economics at the university. And in 1993, he achieved an MA in Economics from the Eastern Illinois University in Charleston in the United States of America. In 2020, Dr. Mondi received a PhD in Economics, also at the University of the Witswatersrand. Dr. Mondi is a senior lecturer at the School of Economics and Finance and the Wits Business School at the University of the Witswatersrand. His research interests include microeconomics, the political economy, climate change, energy justice and just transition, technology and innovation in the energy sector, including battery storage, hydrogen, and mining of energy metals. He is a senior advisor to the Pallinghurst Partnership and a member of the group's senior advisory panel. He is a director of Sedibelo Resources Limited, a lead independent director of Gemfields Group Limited, and the chairman of Tello Rolling Stock Leasing, an IDC subsidiary. Dr. Mondi is a trustee of the South African Housing Development Fund, Finmark Trust, and the Centre of Excellence in Financial Services. Dr. Mondi was a member of the State-Owned Enterprise Presidential Review Committee. Previously, Dr. Mondi served as a member of President Mbeki's Economic Advisory Panel. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Mondi.
Thank you so much, Mark. So what I'm going to do, because I've got technical issues with the transition, and so I'll speak, and then once I've been helped, we'll take it forward. So I think the key takeaways from Dr. Malumbazo is really that coal remains a very important and strategic mineral. We, in that discussion, she highlighted how coal in South Africa and the debate that are taking place in South Africa are revolving around one area, which is energy, which in fact, historically, coal having played a very important and critical role in what Fanon Rastomje calls a minerals and energy complex. What is encouraging, of course, is the existence of the current MEC minerals, iron ore, which remains a mineral of the future, but also many others, such as some in the PGMs, where we are mining extensively, both in the eastern and western limb, which are also very, very important. So therefore, what it means is that we need to work towards a new minerals and energy complex, where coal was seen as an energy a driver, critical for the rest of the economy, including mining, but look at coal in a different form, where coal now is has got elements, the rare earth elements that are critical for us in our green energy transition. So, so in the work that's shared with us, it is very clear to us that we need a much more well thought through strategy, different from what we saw on the minerals and energy complex driven by, historically, by people like Ken Smarts, integrating the Africana, that in this new opportunity has been created, looking away from energy with transport, aerospace and defense becoming key critical opportunities for South Africa, where we use those two sectors, using our current endowment of iron ore, of our PGMs, vanadium, the bushveld complex, but also using some of those core rare earth elements, which will then come together and supplement and complement those new sectors that are emerging. So this is a real opportunity that we have in South Africa. Of importance, a question that you have to ask, why is South Africa not having a strategic list of these rare earth minerals? Once it's got that strategic rare earth minerals, the next question to ask, therefore, is that if you've got those rare earth minerals, how do you ensure that post net zero, you'll have sufficient reserves for yourself to sustain the new economy going forward? And lastly, how do we support, therefore, we've got a list, we've got strategic project around how we can ensure our security going forward. Then thereafter, how much then can you engage and sell it to the rest of the world? This is very, very important. As we saw in the earlier presentation, that China, that does not have a lot of these rare earth minerals, has ensured that it's able to source them elsewhere. And therefore, it looks much more endowed and having a much larger suite of the rare earth minerals. The other important takeaway from Dr. Malumbazo relates to how coal and the debate that you've seen around coal has not thought through also about the role of finance. I think many of us were very quick because we saw coal as only an energy resource, not beyond what elements compose it. And therefore, the whole debate and the work that's been done is about coal. And there's so much what's been done. Our colleagues at the Center of Energy Rights in Cape Town have done an amazing work around the Mpumalanga area, just to see building various scenario, what would it mean for coal-fired power stations in Mpumalanga and the impact on the community and employment. So that work has been done. But recently also people have come out with various scenarios, all of them looking at coal as a big problem. As you have heard this afternoon, is that we're looking at coal from a different lens, and we're saying coal actually, we can use it in a way whereby South Africa plays a critical role in exploiting those. And in that regard, this is why it is important for us to have a new discussion away from the energy. Look at coal around its role in the two critical sectors, the transport sector, and then secondly, the defense and aerospace sector, which all of them are underpinned by various subsectors, which are critical for our economy and the greening of our economy towards net zero. I'm going on here because the technology is letting me down. I think I get a thumbs up, so it's going to come now. So apologies to everyone where if you are missing me somehow. So I'm going to transition now to my technology, and hopefully it does not let me down. Apologies. Thank you so much. So we've talked about coal. Let me now introduce other minerals that South Africa has that are very pivotal and where they are today. I'm going to focus on the critical ones, which are important. All of us, we know that in the Northern Cape, we've got huge reserves of manganese. We do have some chromium in the northwest, the part of Limpopo. There's some niobium, tantalum, vanadium, zirconium ores across the nation, as well as zinc ores across the nation. And these, in fact, were trading extensively with the rest of the world. Where these ores are going, as you can see, has been discussed earlier, is that even those ores outside the critical ones, those ores are going to China, they're going to Germany, they're going to UAE. So in the absence of a South African strategy around the green economy, around the mineral endowment that we have, and how we can exploit it beyond the current noise and the current debate, remains a big area of concern and an opportunity for South Africa to exploit. I mentioned earlier about how coal has been researched. I referred to the CR, the Center Village Right. This is team at the city, what the work that's been done around coal. Mark Swelling and his colleagues, a team of 16, have examined the linkages between the energy transition and economic development. So all of us have really looked at coal as an energy source. And we have not thought through about the transport, about the other sectors that could emerge within our macroeconomy. Of concern as well is basically in South Africa, is that in the debate around the coal, there are huge regimes that have got vested interests. One noticed a significant alliance in South Africa between powerful actors represented by the government, the state-owned electricity, utility, some large mineral and mining companies, which have historically made an energy complex. So that group, because its focus has been on energy, they have missed the opportunity that belies us, because all the debate about coal in South Africa is about energy. It's not about new sectors that could emerge. And all of us are familiar here about these power blocks that are organized and are deeply entangled in entrenched networks of political and economic power and rents which they can make within the existing minerals and energy complex. Nandi spoke about the RP 2019, but what I want to do is, what I want to say here is that if you look at the work that Nandi presented in relation to the EU or the America, is that South Africa is in a different part of the global space. And our context differs considerably, geographically, economically, and socially. And therefore, there exists a big gap between policy and local context. That is why we are pushing an argument this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, pushing an argument that, yes, we are in transition. We know the energy, as you've articulated, problem that relates to coal-fired power station, as well as the subsoil technology of coal to liquids. We know that. We're asking South Africans to think about the new mineral and energy complex that rests itself in the new industries that belie us. New industries that are going to come from South Africa identifying and understanding its critical resource minerals. Having done so, look at the strategic future towards 2050 as to how South Africa exploits its own endowment across various minerals, and invest on R&D where we explore deeper about what other minerals we might be having, because our country is vast. That then gets followed by a new economic development strategy, whereby our debate around coal is no longer around energy. Our debate around coal is seeing coal as an asset, and we invest on R&D where financial institution, development finance institution, move away from the current idea and ideology, which has banished coal and made it difficult for us to do our work. Because every time we engage with our stakeholders, we talk about coal. Coal is being looked at in the energy lens. We are trying to persuade you that you look at coal as an asset beyond the energy. Look at the opportunity that belies us in the transport sector, as well as the defense and aerospace. That's the message that we're trying to send. And a lot of the stuff has been covered on the slides, which we'll share with you. I just didn't want to take a lot of time, given the comment that we have coming from the group, and we'd like to engage deeper on this and talk about how we can really look at coal in a different lens, work together, and form new partnership, new strategic partnership, where the whole national innovation system, our government, the private sector, researchers across the transition, universities, trade unions, communities, work together towards a new minerals and energy complex, underpinned by a variety of critical minerals, but more importantly also by us maximizing the endowment that we have by extracting a number of the rare earth minerals that are on coal. Let me leave it there so that we can have a nice discussion coming through. Thank you so much, Mark. We can go ahead and engage on those questions on the side. Apologies for the IT issue I have. Thank you.
No, not a problem. I think we're all quite dissipated across the country today. So thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Mondi. We do have some questions in the chat. We'll go to them now. I do know that we're a little bit ahead of time, so that's perfect. I just as an observation, I was in France a few years ago and discovered a motor car that was in the 1930s running on batteries. And, if you go back a little bit further in the 1800s, or 1900s, they were doing battery-powered motor cars. And politics seems to make a big difference as to the direction that evolution takes. And we decided to do the internal combustion engine instead. So here are a couple of questions that are coming through, and maybe we could start with the first one, and that is the quality of coal, or is the quality of all coals produced in South Africa the same as USA coals? I don't know, Dr. Malumbazo, do you want to answer that?
No, the answer is no. The coals that are actually produced from South Africa, they actually differ from those that are produced from the US. In the US, you've got your subbituminous coal or your soft coal, and then in South Africa, we have your bituminous coal and anthracite coal. So the type of coal, it's totally different from what we have, from what the Northern Hemisphere has.
And does that provide us with a competitive advantage, or is it something that we can't use? Sorry, you're on mute.
did not get that. Then the other question.
Sorry, I was just following on that question and asking if our coal gives us any competitive advantage.
Okay, we're experiencing load shedding.
You can have all the minerals you want, it's not going to make power.
I'm really not sure about the internet connection, whether are we...
It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
No
I'll
problem,
just...
I'm sure your generator will come on now.
Let me switch off the camera in the meantime. The advantage is that our coal is highly being used for in the steel production. And that's what we actually, most of the coal that we export to the Asian countries. And then the coal then that is regarded to be of low quality is the one that is then being supplied for power generation. So yes, that's the difference. But currently we used to have good coal quality, but we have run out of those resources and reserves of good coal qualities. The good coal quality that we have, they are actually deep. You can find it in coal fields that have got coal seams that are more than 250 meters, which then needs huge financial muscle. So that's the current scenario that we have in South Africa when it comes to the coal production or coal mining.
Right, so extensive investment required in getting it out the ground as well.
Yes.
So the second question that came through is South Africa still going to commit to the 2050 green energy goals while Europe is reopening their coal mines? That sounds more like a political question. I don't know who can answer that.
I think Dr. Mondi can answer that, but I can answer that shortly. As far as things stand currently, we are still committed to such. So from my side, I think we are still committed to such because the world is also committed to such. Until a different announcement is made, then that's when things can change.
Right. And we are part of the global community. And of course, we have a number of arguments around who caused what and why we should all be the same, etc. But the reality is that the international community is setting the pace and we are going to have to do something and something significant over time. We have our third question, which says...
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Mark. Yeah, so I just want to change that response, put it in a very positive way. That is basically what I was saying is that we have a resource and that resource historically and currently in the current debate of Africa revolves around energy. So everyone is caught up all saying, no, not this, not that, because of the energy poverty that we're experiencing. What I'm saying is that actually there are opportunities here. We need to change the debate and work towards a green economy. So our commitment to net zero at 2050 is real. We've committed ourselves at COP 27 and COP 28, both in Glasgow and recently in Egypt, committed ourselves to that. And if you look at the budget from the Minister of Finance is very clear where we're going. So there is no net loss. We're arguing that there's no, in the coal debate, when people talk about the energy debate, is that coal is finished, no more. We're saying no, there is value in coal. We need resources, we need support from all South Africans, all the stakeholders to look at coal differently. And that's what this class was about, was to try and change the debate that coal actually, with the embedded elements in it, is critical for our transport as well as our aerospace and defense and other areas. We should create those jobs that our colleagues that are referred to at CR in Cape Town and many others on the transition as well as the Mpumalanga issue. Saying there's an opportunity here, and if you do the thing right, but it requires a different mindset. It requires banks and other institutions to invest on the R&D that Dr. Malumbazo and many of us are doing. That's the ask that we're saying. And if you do that, we will have these elements and we can really have a new MEC as I've argued. And MEC different from the past, which was a coal energy driven. Another one, which is now rare critical minerals driven and into new sectors, such as transport and logistics, as well as aerospace and defense. Thanks, Mark.
And in terms of that narrative, how long do you think this all takes? I mean, before we really have made the right investments, do you have a timeline in mind? Dr. Mondi? So you're on mute? There you go.
Yeah, Mark. Yes, you're saying about a timeline?
Sorry, so if we do invest, I mean, how long before the dividend sort of starts paying off and we get those rare earths the minerals that we need? Do you have a timeline on that? Because you need a strategy, right? I mean,
we need a strategy. I mean, Mark, we do have already, many of our colleagues are working on it. I know a private sector around the Bushveld complex is working around vanadium. I know our colleagues at Anglo and Impala Platinum are working on fuel cells. So there's a lot of work that's being done, but it's not being informed by a country strategy around a green-orientated development agenda, where all our resources that we have, we use them to try and achieve net zero by 2050. So we're hoping that this engagement this afternoon starts bringing that discussions among the players that are here today, but also the support that is required for us to shape that needs all the stakeholders within our national system of innovation, including banks. So if you can get everyone understanding that, particularly the financial sector, including institutional investors who have shunned away from coal, that let's look at coal and see how we can extract, given the work that Dr. Malumbazo and others are doing in relation to that. Thanks, Mark.
And do you think that this is going to be in one place that is going to coalesce, or is it going to be scattered across various ministries in terms of getting this national strategy?
So historically, in South Africa, the uniting document will have been our national development plan. It's outdated, it's stale, and our leadership has not acted on it at all. No performance put on it. We're calling for a rethink as South Africans around this new economy, and really investing on it and making sure that we maximize on our endowment. We've got so much mineral resources in our country. We are, if we play our game very well, we can produce new technologies, but those new technologies require us to think differently about our future. That's the strategy, but also for money to follow knowledge development, research, and particularly research. And as we did historically, remember, Mark, this university was built to solve mining problems. And we're asking everyone today that let's look at our resources differently, and let's do what historically we've done by using knowledge and research and development as an asset that will usher this new economy that we're talking about, the new MEC.
That's great. Thanks, Dr. Mondi. That's a great thread. Dr. Malumbazo, do you want to say something?
No, I don't want.
Okay.
I think.
So the next question in the chat says, and I'm going to read up the abbreviations. It says, what are the environmental risks of the extraction of REE, CRE from coal? How does this process align with minimizing of carbon emissions? Dr. Malumbazo, do you want to take that?
Okay. When it comes to the environmental risk, there are minimal environmental risk associated with the extraction of rare earth elements from coal. Remember that the coal that you are actually using, it will be discard coals, firstly, meaning that you are at least trying to rehabilitate whatever historical mining activities that have been left there by the mining industries. So that's number one. and also on the extraction itself, because the risk is really associated with combusting or burning the coal. Then that's when your CO2 then will then be emitted. But then if you are not burning coal, you are actually trying to take out the minerals that are in coal by using your acidic solvents or your adsorption materials. Then you are not really contributing that much to the environment. You are actually trying to minimize whatever that was there that was left by the previous by the mining legacy activities.
So that makes sense.
So there are minimal, there's actually minimal risk towards generating more of the environmental challenges, because
So
in this case, you are not burning coal.
Yeah, so what it makes sense is that you're doing a bit of a cleanup operation and having a dividend come from that cleanup operation. And if the dividend is big enough, the mining companies that are doing the offtake might find it useful to actually go back and start doing those cleanups. And then I suppose it'll be a separate conversation around when we run out of cleanup and you've got to go and take normal coal out the ground, there will be a different process?
Yes, because in this case, we are not saying mining companies should stop mining coal. They can continue to mine coal, but then whatever waste, which is your coal discards, your coal fly ash, and your acid mine water, you can then extract the CREs from that. So they can continue mining, but whatever waste is being generated from there, it can then be utilized for something else to support then the green economy.
That's perfect. And then I suppose the next question that comes in says, is the higher concentration of LREE associated with organic or inorganic components of the coal discard?
Currently, I cannot really respond on this one, because we have not really embarked on trying to actually go down into the structural component of coal as to where these light REEs they're actually embedded on. So this is a study that we started, I think, in 2019, and the other one started last year. So with more funding that we can actually obtain, then we can then dwell into the structural component. Currently, we're doing these studies just to prove that this is possible, because there was a time in 2018 where we actually went to present for funding at various institutions or various entities. And then most of the companies did not believe in such. They said, firstly, you need to prove that there is actually rare earth elements or critical raw materials present in coal. So these studies were actually done just to prove that, yes, there is. And yes, it's possible, you can then extract. Then once funding is actually obtained, then we can then go further into then the structural component as to where these coals are actually sitting. Because you can also, when you're actually crushing your coal, you can also look at the particle size as to where are these critical raw materials sitting? Are they sitting on the fine coal discards, or are they sitting on the lump? Where are they actually embedded on?
So more research required in order for us to understand, so that we can benefit from it. Absolutely.
Yes.
So the next question, I think it might also come to you. Unfortunately, some MOFs suffer from the drawback of relatively poor stability, which would limit their practical applications. What structural characteristics make MOF 808 stable, and how stable is it?
Okay, this is a zirconium MOFs that we are going to use. It has been, it's a MOFs that have been used at UJ with Dr. Vacha, because Dr. Vacha is the initiator of, he's the one that actually synthesizes these MOFs. So he has used these MOFs for CO2 storage, to prove that the more CO2 you can actually, so these MOFs can actually also be used for carbon capture and storage. So you can actually store your CO2 into the MOFs itself. So that's how these MOFs are stable. They've been used in the CO2 in the carbon capture and utilization projects.
So although you might have touched on this question, it says it would be good to hear or map out specific topics that need research regarding coal in South Africa from your view as Wits Business School?
I'm not sure whether I should speak for the business school or for the chemical engineering department, but
the business school will provide you with the funding.
I saw which Professor was actually with us to actually respond to that. Currently, we do have some topics that we have mapped out. Not only for the business school, but it's a collaboration between the business school, myself, and Dr. Mondi, because you cannot really look at the science part or the engineering part of coal, but also we also need to do the econometrics of such, which is the reason then the collaboration also with Dr. Mondi to look at the economics then of then this new industry that is trying to then be built, because you need to also look at the cruciality of the circular, of these critical raw materials in the circular economy or in the green economy. So because we can't go around and be preaching a gospel that you can extract critical raw materials from coal, whereas you don't have a sense of its economic value or its economic contribution towards the country. So that's why then you also need the economic component. So we do have research projects that are actually mapped up in support. Also, yeah, we're supporting the business school, chemical engineering, as well as the School of Economics. We're supporting each other in this aspect.
So you just need to be unleashed to be able to do the work that needs to be done.
To be done, yes.
So there's another question. Now that we believe that coal and its products has a potential to host REE, is there work being done to extract it from coal, even lab scale work?
The lab scale work, it's the one that we're currently using the MOFs on. So currently we're synthesizing the MOFs. In the next month or so, we'll do then the extraction, which is through adsorption process. And then I think by June, July, would we then have a lab work results that shows that yes, you can then extract critical raw materials, and what type of critical raw materials can then be extracted using this MOFs 808, because you also have different types of MOFs, which is different types of MOFs can then extract different types of critical raw materials from coal. But currently we are using the zirconium one because it's highly stable when it comes to the metal extraction.
And suppose, I mean, as somebody who's following this, if I was on the outside looking in, how would I follow this in terms of the work that you're doing? Are you going to publish this research? Where would you do it? And how would I become an ambassador for the work that you're doing?
The work, yes, it will be published in scientific journals. It will also be presented. There is an upcoming rare earth element conference, which is being hosted by SAIM. The work will also be presented in that conference. We're still debating, because I'm part of the organizing committee, we're still debating on the date for the conference itself, whether it should be in June or September. So once we actually have a clear date, then there's actually a section on the secondary resources of rare earth elements. Secondary resources, extraction of rare earth elements from secondary resources. So we have a full session on such, where then different researchers from different institutions, because it's not only a South African conference, it's sort of an international conference that we're having, but then it will be in Namibia. So a person who wants to follow up on this work can actually register also for that conference, but also, yes, the work will be published.
And I would imagine on LinkedIn, you'll be shouting from the treetops, telling everybody how wonderful the research is and where we've come from.
Yes, we have to market the research that we have,
okay.
that we're actually doing.
So we can follow you, and we can get links, and we can do whatever we need to be part of this debate and to talk about it. So that's fantastic. There's another question which said, who should champion the strategy in totality so that we don't have silos in development? Well, that's a question and a half in South Africa, isn't it?
I think Dr. Mondi, he has been on that space of strategy and the political arenas, and then he can respond to that question as to who can then tap in this. Thank you.
Yeah. So Mark, again, this is where a new development plan becomes very important, embedded within our national system of innovation. So, and driven by that. So we should start from the presidency and cascade across nation. So what we expect is that the presidency will have this new consultative forum twice per annum of all the sectors. So we'll have the financial service sector, we'll have the Minerals Council, we'll have the trade union movement, we'll have the communities, where we basically look at the plan and discuss where we are from different sectors. Because a plan has to be a plan that seeks to talk to the issues of South Africa, high levels of poverty, unemployment and inequality, and seemingly with the debate on the energy side, a lot of discontent because of people feeling that they're being left out because the technology comes from elsewhere. So in this, the work that Dr. Malumbazo and others are doing, we're trying to bring back everything home and say, look, we can take on the rest of the world. We are a mining town. This city where we're at in Braamfontein and Johannesburg is built on mining with knowledge here. Let's use that. But it requires a national development plan, a new one, driven by all the players, and an annual or a biannual consultative process amongst all stakeholders so that we can be winners again and stop complaining and accusing each other and play a game at the highest level against the North. Thank you.
So thank you, that's very useful. And we're going to follow that, I'm quite sure, going forward. Another question here, methanol, proven process for selective liquefaction of high ash coal? I suppose that's a question.
Is it a question or a comment?
I don't know. It
I
was
think
just
it's a comment.
A comment. Are you agreeing with the comment?
I cannot agree or disagree because I have not done any research in this aspect. So I would take whatever Louis is actually saying, and then I will go and do more research on it.
Because he's also mentioned that the acetine route to PVC by the Coalplex route, and he said, Coalplex, that's what I read. So the acetine route to PVC by the Coalplex route.
I'll also take, I think those three, those are comments.
Yeah.
What he has written there.
All right, so then moving on then, another comment was, I thought combustion is important to concentrate the rare elements, and chemical reaction or oxidation will always produce CO2. The management of CO2 ecosystem is unavoidable.
In this case, the research that is proposed is not to actually combust, is to actually take what is out there produced by Eskom as your coal ash. That's what is being done currently. And then if you've got your coal discard, then you extract your critical rare earth elements from coal discards and coal. So you're actually taking what is available. We are not actually combusting or concentrating your critical raw materials or coal. You are taking what is there that is regarded as a waste currently in the country.
Yes, yes. And so the next question almost regurgitates what you've just said, but I'd like you to be specific about that. I mean, the question goes, many countries are moving away from coal as believe that it causes pollution. So my question is, how will coal contribute to climate change without negative effects? I think we just need to be clear about what we're saying.
Okay. Many countries are moving away from coal when it comes to power generation or coal to liquid processes. But you cannot, let's say, 100% move away from coal. This also takes me then to a different topic altogether on energy reform. Because whether we like it or not, yes, coal is dirty. Coal actually emits CO2. You have your BRICS countries. If you can look at the energy landscape of the BRICS countries currently, we will actually see that it's only South Africa that is actually using coal at magnitude that we're actually using coal on. Most countries are actually, like, I think after South Africa, you've got 48% of other countries, like they are actually using coal at a minimal, at less than 50% for energy generation. So yes, for energy generation, coal is bad because you combust coal. But then I think the message on today's presentation or on this masterclass is that let's move away from power generation. Let's move away from electricity generation. Let's move away from your coal to liquid processes, because we know that you can replace coal there with your renewable energy, with your hydrogen energy. Let's look at other industries that will not require coal combustion process, that will not, meaning it will not require for you to actually burn coal, but then to actually take out the minerals that are currently there without heating or burning coal so that you can emit CO2. And then take those minerals and then use such minerals, because those are the minerals that are needed for the green economy. So it's a matter of what else can we then use coal for if it's not for power generation or for energy production.
So psychologically, I'm a let's all hate coal kind of person. And now I've got to change my mindset, which says, well, maybe coal has additional values that we could use without doing the sort of damaging effects to the environment. And it is quite a mindset change to be able to move across to that. The final question in the chat seems to be around the Presidential Climate Commission. I don't know, Dr. Mondi, if you would want to respond to this, but it says the Presidential Climate Commission could be a good place to situate this research. What are your thoughts?
We think that the knowledge centers, which are all our colleagues in the knowledge space, our neighbors, University of Johannesburg, Northwest, across all our knowledge systems, will require us to do more work on this work. So I think the first step for us is do more research, more R&D. So where we see the Presidential Climate Commission playing a role is really influencing our political principles around the new economic development strategy that seeks to achieve our goals of eliminating poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which is a new national development strategy towards a green economy. So I think because they're already there in the net, they could really work with us to shape the new thinking within our political principles. Our role is to really do our research work and show that it's possible. And in doing so, as a knowledge center, in doing so, if we get the support from the private sector, from other players, then we'll critical mass whereby we will show a true people making money out of it, because I think those sharper ones are going to make money out of the work that they're doing. They will use that, and the political principles can then see that actually it is possible. So this is where we are. So we see them as a partner in this, but the research belongs where it belongs, because where you are, Mark, we are not tainted with any political agenda. We're not tainted with any. Our purpose is knowledge and innovation to support our country, make a country winner. That's where we're coming from. Thank you, Mark.
Can I also add?
Please.
Can I also add, Mark, into what Mondi was saying? In terms of proving that this concept can really work, there are companies in the US, it's your American Resources Corporation or your RE Technologies. They are actually embarking, they have commercialized the work that we are actually doing. And also in terms, they are also willing to partner up if then there is a will from our side, from our government, from our industry. They are willing to come and partner up with us as vets in this type of research work that we are doing. But also that's what Dr. Mondi was saying, that we need the political will, we need the industry on board, we need everyone on board to actually have this change mindset that, okay, fine, there's nothing we can do about the CO2 that is being emitted by coal, but if we are not combusting it, what else can we then do about it?
So it's all about a new terminology of cleaner use of coal, but without the burning part of it. So thank you very much. And we're sort of coming to the end now, and perhaps I could ask Mr. Chinetsa to close and to do the thank yous.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. My goodness, that was a very sort of insightful and informative session from both our presenters. I mean, as I stated at in my introduction, COOFs brings together thought leaders and initiates appropriate research on topical issues with the objective of interrogating the role of financial services institutions, both national and internationally. In the banking sector, terms like stranded assets have become commonplace. Companies with large deposits of coal have lost value. Banks have faced pressure to stop or reduce funding of coal extraction. Board members have resigned or been forced to resign where their companies have not been able to demonstrate a commitment to reduce investment in coal extraction. This is because coal is seen only as an energy source. And this is a point that both our presenters actually drove home today. Coal is seen largely as an energy source and nothing else. There are other uses, green uses for coal and coal byproducts. As the presenters have pointed out, new industries that are emerging include transport and aerospace. Interestingly, there still have been all these inconsistent messages emanating from COP. We've just had one COP now coming from Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, but I can't say that there was a consensus all around about the way forward. But you know, it's I think this is going to remain something on the agendas of policymakers. Another takeaway from the presentations is the need to look at the supply of critical raw materials. These are needed for the move towards the green economy, or decarbonization, or net zero 2050, and also its economic impacts. Clean coal technology may sound like an oxymoron, but our presenters have looked at the continual contribution of coal beyond power generation towards the green economy of the country. There needs to be an initiative to extract critical raw materials and rare earth elements from secondary sources, including coal, coal discards, coal fly ash, and slime dams. This has to be accompanied by an appropriate investment in R&D. A concern going forward will be the supply of sufficient rare earth materials to sustain the new industries after net zero. And it just remains for me to thank Wits and to also thank our thought leaders, Drs. Lumkile and Nandi. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, everybody. We did say we would be up until 3 o'clock. It looks like I've been able to give you back a few minutes, which is wonderful. Get a cup of coffee, and hopefully we will be able to get, I don't think we've managed to get the actual presentations in the chat, but what we will do is we will get your addresses and we will send them to you so that you've got something to read and to look at. And if you can follow us, particularly Dr. Malumbazo, on LinkedIn, etc., we will be able to keep this debate going. And the message to take away, people, is that coal, it's not about burning it. It's definitely about alternatives to coal. And people like myself are going to have a really good think around how we separate the narrative between the bad coal and the potentially good coal, and how we give that life and take it forward. And everyone's invited to participate in that narrative. So with that, thank you so much to the presenters. Thank you, Mr. Chinetsa, and thank you for joining us today. I know it's a very busy schedule for everybody, but certainly we will keep in touch, and hopefully we'll see you again soon with the next edition of what has been achieved in this interesting part of coal. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.